Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
Well, before you start, while you're figuring up your thing, you should go ahead and make my correction from the last episode, because you had that in our notes. Okay, and we don't actually have written notes. I know the people that stand up on the floor, they use written notes. I would never do that if I was speaking to the bill. I don't like written notes.
I think speaking from the heart is very effective, but there's always this nervousness from electeds that they're going to go off script and say something in their own political career, and that's a risk. So speaking from notes is sort of like a safety net, but I agree.
That would be me.
It's more impactful. We've already tweeted enough to end our career.
I know, right? Mine will never start.
When you speak from the heart, though, and I think people should know that and need to remember that. So
True.
The correction is, and thank you to our folks who are friends of the program who brought this correction to our attention.
Screw you, Jacob.
Brutal. Is my microphone working? Because mine is so tiny. Do I just talk this quiet? Hold on. See? Testing 1, 2, 3. Listen, everything we did before, everyone's just going to have to listen to my voice flowing through Brian's microphone because it's that point in session, right?
Yeah, we're just keeping going. We're not redoing it. We're not restarting.
Good enough. So anyway, a friend of the program, House Republicans force vote on sanctuary state law, and this happened on May 8th. They pulled House Bill 3551, and I think in a previous podcast we had mentioned that we were looking for Republicans to do more on sanctuary, and I think there's still room to do more, but we did want to call this out as there's a bill that was pulled. There still needs to be more discussion of Healthier Oregon when we had a big fight in Capitol Construction Subcommittee, so all the subcommittees are closed except for CapCon. So if you watch and bills get pulled to CapCon, that means they're moving. They get assigned to CapCon, right? So there's really only that one subcommittee that's running now. And Senator McClain brought out, and Representative Greg Smith and others in that Senate Bill 95 to add some new judges. They cut the last 2 judges from that list, and that was so we have judicial districts, and some of them are big enough where they're just one county. Some of them are multiple counties. So in Eastern Oregon, you've got the Umatilla-Morrow Judicial District. They took off an extra judge from there, and they took one from Crook Jefferson. And Senator McClain alluded to this. He said, we have this mission creep that has gone all across the legislature, and we're doing all these things that are non-core services, and then we have 2 judge positions that we're not willing to fund for those core services. And I was sitting there watching this, and it was great. You go back and watch that CapCon with Senate Bill 95, that subcommittee. Good rural versus urban fight. Classic, solid
the whole subcommittee
stuff. The whole subcommittee. And Representative Smith was
fire. He
was on fire. And he was just
somebody
really
was laughing.
Upset.
Did you hear his comments when somebody was laughing?
There was a Democrat that was laughing, and he said this wasn't a laughing matter, and he was very serious about it, and really brought it. And it's serious when he starts talking about how his constituents feel about stuff. When any member starts saying, "Hey, my constituents," that's really them using their constituents as a way to kind of bring out, "I'm pissed about this, and I'm going to tell people about it too." And then McClain, of course, was, "I'm a no in the subcommittee, and I'm a no in Ways and Means, and I'm a no on the floor, and I'm going to give a speech each time," and all this stuff. But anyway, good old classic urban versus rural fight. But he alluded to this. We're doing stuff that was not core services. Judges, I think, very, one of the 3 branches of government, your judicial branch, very core service, dealing with public safety, very core service, and yet we're funding illegal immigrants. But he didn't say illegal immigrant healthcare. And I was staring at the TV saying, "Say Healthier Oregon, Senator. Say Healthier Oregon."
Do it.
So maybe somebody will do it on the floor. But,
I don't know. It's a tough, I tweeted this today, X'd it. See, you can't just say X'd it, Reagan. That's a weird one.
That's why the renaming of Twitter was a bad decision.
Yeah, because
I love the new ownership,
which was kind of cool, right? So
yes, but I liked Twitter, and I thought the idea of Twitter, and it's still a good app, but naming an ex.
The Columbia County Sheriff put out a press release today that basically, because of our sanctuary status, that they've lost federal funding for their Marine deputies. So now they're cutting back basically their ability to patrol shit on the river. So, and lakes and stuff. So it's like, okay, well, now this stuff is just going to keep happening, and Oregon is just going to lose. And especially in rural Oregon, this becomes a rural Oregon divide, because a lot of the federal funding that they're kind of cutting on the federal level that is attached to sanctuary status stuff probably affects us more so in the rural parts of Oregon, which is a bummer. But Trump can't, you can't blame Trump for that. Like the Democrats would love to just blame Trump for that. And it's like, well, no, we need to control our borders and get illegal aliens, especially the ones that are able-bodied, military age, off healthcare and out of our country, that are bad people. Like, just, what, this has got to happen. I saw the Mayor Bass down in California. She tweeted, see, I'm there, I just said it again, about how this is going to, cost Californians and send us into a recession, because all of our workers and everything. I'm like, well, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I noticed a Instagram from Representative Ruiz and the Oregon Farm Bureau. And that's pretty unique. I don't see the Farm Bureau do like joint statements with legislators very often. And so, but they were talking about how brutal the enforcement is at farms and all this stuff and how terrible it is.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say, I understand the challenges that farmers face. I think that there's going to need to be some adapting to the new situation, because Trump paused it for farms for a little bit.
Like a day.
He unpaused it. So, to get some feedback from farmers and then go, nope, we're still going to keep going. So I think
crazy.
I'm just sort of surprised at that choice, that particular choice by the Farm Bureau, not a choice I would have made in terms of how to distribute that information. I think there's a lot of their membership and their base that is actually not super in agreement with doing something like that. So definitely something to watch, but very interesting stuff. So Brian, I'm currently trying to remove the paywall on this Oregonian article, because paying for the Oregonian is
you can use
not
my
something
account.
I currently
told
do.
you that.
Oh, you have a login?
Yeah.
Oh, I need to get your login.
Everybody ready for it? It's Brian at
Anyway, first topic.
Yeah. All right. So are we doing lightning round? Okay. So
Lightning
you're doing
round.
your light. For those that didn't hear Reagan in the beginning because he was on mic.
Yes.
Lightning round.
It's truly professional
We're
situation.
going to zip through stuff, fire up while votes are happening on the floor, all the things. We get to be here podcasting. So I like that. So first topic.
Crying in the Oregon legislature.
Oh.
Lawmakers keep breaking into
Great one.
tears. Unheard of a generation ago. And it's pretty entertaining. They've got these screenshots of all these legislators in the middle of tears. And it's very bipartisan tears. You've got, Hartman, Solman, High Fam, Darcy Edwards, Stacey Graber, and Kevin Mannix. And I'm sure there's more. And many on the verge of tears too. We've seen plenty of people on the verge of tears as well. So what do you think about crying on the floor, Brian?
The article sadly wasn't as good as it could have been, because they should have had a few people talking on anonymity that blasted him for crying on the floor. I think what's my coffee cup say right here, Reagan?
There's no crying in politics. Maybe I'll take a picture and make that the image for the podcast. Although I have a picture of an image hanging at my desk that Brian sent in a group text. I agree with Reagan now, so I printed that off. So I might put that as the picture. But in any event, Tom Hanks, there's no crying in baseball, right?
No, it's just silly. Like, I find it's fine that you're passionate about something, and there's a couple issues. I think the one where I want to see was Rep Hartman talked about her sexual abuse or something like that. I mean, that's got to be pretty intense for her to talk about. I would say if it was that intense for you to talk about, I probably wouldn't talk about it. I would let somebody else talk about it and then not, because I don't want to be seen crying on the floor. Just because I don't think it's it's just not. You're not really making. It's like they don't allow us to drop F-bombs on the floor. So
well, you can, but
is,
then you're gonna be prevented from speaking further.
Yeah, yes, you can say it once, I guess. I just, if you're trying to accentuate your point, right, add emotion to it, is kind of what's happening, and you're bringing your personal story, but it just seems very over the top, and I think it's emotion. I think some of it's even faked. I think some of it is they worked themselves up. I saw, somebody leaving the floor when they were talking about the transgender stuff from the Supreme Court, and there was this oddity of, and somebody was leaving and they were crying when, it wasn't a member, but it was somebody else on the floor. And I'm like, we're in Salem and you're crying about a Supreme Court decision on our floor. Like, I mean, I know you're probably upset, but kind of like, stop it, get over it. That's kind of my take and I wish somebody in that story would have kind of blasted back, because I think if you were a legislator in the 70s and 80s, you would have been the laughing stock of the floor. There's no doubt, right?
Well, and I guess my question is are the anti-criers too afraid to go on the record? Maybe they reached out and they couldn't get anyone to go on the record as being anti-crying. So
Carlos didn't call me. I don't know who wrote the article, but
yeah, let's see. Regardless, I think that, like you said, there's a couple of exceptions where I think it makes sense. But the rest of it seems sometimes that the topic doesn't reach the level of necessary to have tears. But of course, I'm sure we'll get smacked with, well, it's just somebody else's lived experience, and your lived experience is too different. So,
wah, wah.
And I will say, as a parent now, I watch movies differently. Movies about kids and parents, you kind of see that and you go, oh, that pulls at your heartstrings a little more. As a kid, you're like, let's get to the action, So I understand that people are going to be in different positions of life and care more about different things, but at the end of the day, I think the crying too much on the floor actually makes it less special and less impactful. I think that's a real point. It's going to be less impactful if there's so much crying on the floor.
All right, moving on. No crying in politics.
13 seconds left. We did that one.
Boom.
All right.
I didn't even look at your stopwatch.
There it is. All right. Next topic is Israel and Iran.
Talk about crying.
Yeah. So yesterday on the floor, Representative Chaichi did a remonstrance, I think, about the genocide, the ongoing genocide that they claim is happening and is not happening, because genocide is the elimination of an entire people. And what Israel is not doing is they are not attacking areas where civilians predominantly are. Now, that doesn't mean that some civilians don't die as a result of an attack, because these terrorists hide in civilian areas, but they're targeting non-civilian targets. They're targeting terrorism and military targets. Meanwhile, Iran and the terrorists that are in Iran, and same thing with the situation with Hamas in Gaza, and same thing with Hezbollah in Lebanon, they always target Israeli civilians because they're just going for mass casualty. They're not trying to eliminate Israel's military. They've made one attempt on Netanyahu's life, at least that was reported. So anyway, they continue to get this wrong, and I continue to think that we need a pro-Israel resolution, or like we just did in Ways and Means, we have a sister state situation with the Irish now, with Ireland. Let's do sister state with Israel. I'm sure that will get killed by Democrats who are too afraid to go against their pro-Hamas base. But at the end of the day, these
pro-terrorist base.
Pro-terrorist. That's exactly what it is. And people need to understand these governments, and especially the Iranian government, are harborers and people that work with these terrorist groups. Allow them to run rampant in their countries. Do nothing to try to prevent the terrorism. And so eventually somebody's going to have to act. So then that sort of gets to the question that's been kind of prominent on Twitter is, America's going to send troops into the Middle East. That's not happening. However, we do have a pretty good Air Force. We do have pretty good support systems. And as you know,
a lot of ships with a lot of airplanes on them.
A lot of ships with a lot of airplanes. And we've got Tom Cruise. You know, the
Top Gun.
Based on what I'm seeing, the kind of the enrichment facility, the nuclear facility that Iran has appears to be in a mountain and appears to be difficult to reach. And maybe America's the only one that can actually has the capability to hit it. And so I'm reading all this and I'm like, this is the plot of Top Gun Maverick, which is, by the way, a
Bunker Busters.
Great movie. Watch Top Gun Maverick. You won't be disappointed. There isn't a single scene in that movie that's wasted. Anyway, Trump's going to make a decision. Are we going to blow up that facility? He seems to be running out of patience with Iran. I think that's all good stuff. I don't see anything wrong with it.
I don't believe... Well, and if you're Israel, you have to assume that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, one, Iran doesn't care if they kill Palestinians with a bunch of Jews.
Also,
so they'll drop the nuclear bomb on them, and they don't care because Palestinians are just a means to their end.
Yep.
So they don't care about Palestinians. So all these people sticking up for Palestine, all this stuff, it's all horseshit because Iran does not care less. Matter of fact, once the Jews are gone, the Palestinians and the Saudi Arabians, they're all next. You know, I mean, the one thing that kept Iran at bay forever was Iraq. If people remember, I mean, the Iraq-Iran wars were a real thing. And so to believe that Iran somehow or another, if the Jews just don't do anything and Israel doesn't do anything, that they'll just be fine, and it's just not true. Anytime Iran gets any money, they get any sort of force or whatever, they go out there to destroy U.S. and Israel. That's period. That's just the way it is. So I think you have to do you sit back and wait for them to hit you, or do you strike first and you strike hard enough where you knock them back another 20 years? And I think Israel's been doing that in Libya forever. They've been doing that, in all the countries that surround them for a while. So, and they do it with Palestine and all the places. So it's just the reality of it. And I think at the end of the day, the U.S. probably has the bigger bombs. Like you said, they have the more troops. They got the things that they can do to make it happen. And it will be interesting to see where this ends up. I'm not really sure where it ends up, but I do trust that Donald Trump will make the right decision because he doesn't like war.
Yeah, he's not going to put American boots on the ground. That's not a real thing.
Yeah. I think he doesn't like war, so he's going to try diplomacy. But at some point, you might have to drop a couple of shabombs just to get people's attention.
And this is the difference: Obama and Biden never followed through on their threats. If diplomacy didn't work, Trump follows through. He gave him 60 days. He let Israel destroy him.
Yeah.
All right, next topic, and we'll tie it in with TLT here, an update on TLT. So the bill's on the floor right now. They're voting. It is 30-20 with Reschke, Greg Smith, and Scharf left to vote, it looks like.
Yeah.
So, and that basically what's going to happen is it's going to get to 31, and it's going to pass with 31 is what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Is he the
Is Smith
vote
the
right
31st? Now? He is.
And
Greg Smith's the 31st vote. So
he votes yes.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Big tax votes typically don't pass with large margins. You go, and this is not a new, I need to clarify, this is not a new tax, but it is changing the split from 70% tourism and 30% general operations to 40% tourism, 60% operations. That bill heads to your chamber now, Brian, to the Senate.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens there. It should be very interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to analyze that vote to see what D's and ours voted on that one to really take a look.
So but there's this sort of a scandal sort of coloring the background of this. And it's the Travel Oregon CEO whose total compensation when he was there was most recently, now obviously it was lower in prior years, $477,000 total compensation. His paycheck's like $375 a year, and then he's got benefits and stuff, right? And so he announced his retirement sort of at the same time, but totally not, because Willamette Week and others were investigating how Travel Oregon is spending their money, right? They've got a lot of dollars to use. That's what this argument about the split has been about. They've rehired him in retirement, which is a common thing that these agencies do. It's a bit of a way to double dip because you can retire, collect your purse, and a paycheck at the same time. Sounds awesome, unless you're taxpayers, in which case it sounds kind of lousy. But one of the things they're not doing is turning over the offer letter, which is the Public Records Advocate and many lawyers have said is a public document, and they're not turning it over, and that's obviously frustrating legislators and lawmakers. What's your take on this particular move, Brian?
Well, one, great job again by Nigel Jackwis, Oregon Journalism Project, friend of our podcast for sure. Maybe not necessarily a friend of me. He's wrote some negative articles about me, but hey, whatever. It's fine. He's a digger, and I don't mind digging because I think he wrote the facts, and the facts are that were what they were, and I think I was exonerated from that stuff back in the day. But I think that on this particular topic with Travel Oregon, I think he smells a fire where there's smoke, and he's digging, and he found some pot of gold. He's been on this thing for over a year trying to get to sit down with Travel Oregon. The reality is Travel Oregon, I believe, has become a corrupt organization. They have been off there, and they get millions of dollars in tax revenue that comes in via TLT revenue and all the things. And so they have been just pushing into a space that has no real oversight. Their commission is made up of people that think the same way, that want the same thing, and they don't focus on stuff that really matters. They focus on all these shiny tourism stuff that really don't actually help us with tourism. I bet, Reagan, my bet is you could probably not spend $1 on tourism in Oregon, and I would imagine we'll get the same tourist. I don't think these travel whatever things across the country they suck. They're a joke. The internet, if you build one website one time, put all the information, you'll never have to do anything else again. Because what do people do when I'm going to go to Utah for, like Vicky and we have to go to this thing in Park City for a Windermere conference, right? So we're going to Park City. I'm like, let me just Google what to do in Park City, where I say what golf courses are in Park City is what I do. and literally, boom, Google Map, there's the golf courses. I'm going to do my research. Not once did I go on Travel Park City because I don't need it. Like, it's not there. Like, there's no need for it. And then if I go there, they probably tell me to go to the LGBTQ wine tour or something, right? So you're pushing an agenda that also doesn't fit what people are traveling for. So it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't... And not to hit on the LGBTQ stuff. I don't really care about that.
Come get your abortion in Oregon and also visit our wineries or whatever.
Yeah, and I just think it's gone down to this pool where you're paying some guy $400,000 a year. Like, why does a CEO of Travel Oregon need to make $400,000 a year? You're not doing anything that's just over the top. You're putting ads in a magazine that says, come to Oregon. Like, it's not that difficult. So I think it's horrible. I'm glad that it's been exposed. I think you need to keep going, keep digging, keep going. And the TLT tax passed. I don't even know where I'm at on this. I think I told your boss, like I said, here's why you vote yes, here's why you vote no. And she voted no. But you could literally argue, and I believe what Rep. Kate said on the floor, she could literally argue both sides of this bill. And this Travel Oregon thing is a really good reason to vote yes, is all I'm saying. So,
yep. I have more thoughts on this, so we're going to go overtime slightly. Basically,
you can't break the rules.
The chair requests unanimous consent to keep 30 talking. Seconds. It's just like Gomberg yesterday with Black Drag, which we'll cover. Yeah. Well, we're not supposed to applaud, but sometimes we just can't help ourselves, and we're not going to gavel anybody down for that as long as it's something Democrats like. So, Travel Oregon, and here's my concern, and I'm gonna argue the other side right now. Right. Travel Oregon right now is focused on doing tourism. I think they could do a little bit better job, and like you said, point out things that are not traditional. Wine mom type of style things, right? They could do a little bit more golf. They could do a little bit more hunting and whatever, but that's not kosher with the, kind of liberal style of Oregon and their leadership. But the Travel Oregon Commission needs to read the room. And the room is saying, hey, you guys need to follow the transparency laws that even though you're not directly accountable with your budget to the legislature, you're still under. You need to stop paying your CEO twice what a big agency head makes, and you need to be a little bit more upfront about stuff. And what's going to happen is they're basically thumbing their nose at the legislature. That will not work. They're going to hold so tight to the control and the influence that they have, they're going to lose it. And what's going to happen is the legislature is going to come in, and not only will they do the oversight, quote unquote, that the public is demanding, they will also find a way to turn Travel Oregon dollars into a slush fund to pay for their pet projects. And it's like you've already got the entire tax base to spend in the Christmas tree bill, as much money as you are willing to spend on pet projects. And so what we can't allow is Travel Oregon to become a slush fund that legislators get to pick and choose what gets built. Now, what's happening right now is that in a lot of these coastal towns, cities are sitting on massive reserves of this TLT money. And you go, oh, well, why are they doing that? Well, they just don't want to spend it on tourism related stuff. Yep. They can find a way. I think that you can find a legal way to replace your park, your play structure at your park and count that for tourism, but they don't want to do that. They want to sit on this money and go, oh, we can't spend it on important stuff, to try to force what just happened was this bill to pass the House floor. I think there's some disingenuousness here from some of these cities who do need revenue and want to be able to keep up. But also, I've never met, I won't say never, it's rare to come across competent city government. A lot of these governments are not very good at spending their dollars. And part of it is because they just don't have the staff that's really qualified to teach them how to be really responsible. And part of it is they just don't have the willingness to be responsible and reject spending all these extra dollars. All right, let's do transportation next. So House Bill 2025 is the transportation vehicle. And it seems that we're running into a bit of a problem with passing this bill. And it's not the Republicans that are the issue here. I mean, the Republicans are opposed right now. There's a lot of pieces of this they don't like. Yeah. But it's not our votes they're looking for right now. They have not figured out their own caucus yet. And they were getting ready to move 2025 on Wednesday or Thursday, and then that meeting got canceled. And why did that meeting get canceled, Brian?
I don't think they have the votes in either chamber.
Right.
Reagan, I don't think they have enough D's in the House where it has to originate, right? So it's a taxing bill, so it's got to originate from the House.
Right.
I don't think they have the votes over there. I think they're trying to whip their votes as best they can, and they're not going to find any Republican votes, not the way it stands now.
Nope.
And then the article that came out of OPB where Meek said he's a hard no.
Yeah.
Senator Meek.
And then they added Paul Evans here later.
Yeah.
And so the way this works is there'll be one person that's taking the heat. There's usually 2 or 3 others that are actually in the same space, but they don't want to be as public about it. So it's not like they're not just 2 votes away. Maybe in the committee, sure, but on the floors, this isn't a done deal either.
I think, hasn't Evans always been pissed about the bridge from the West Salem Bridge going over? I think it's always been a challenge. Well, in talking with him, I think he's always been pretty, he feels that part of Salem always gets screwed in Independence and that whole area because the bridge is a nightmare, right? And there's no other way to get, without going all the way down south and going over a bridge, there's no other way to get to that part of Salem over there and it's just, I mean, if you ever try leaving Salem at 5:00 to get over that thing, it's just horrible. And they don't expand it. They don't want to expand it. They're not going to expand it. And, then you get, and Meek is probably the same thing about the Oregon City Bridge we've talked about. I-205 has been under construction for 8 years and they're still not done. And everybody along Meek's district hates ODOT. So why would he ever vote for something that he's literally knows he's going to get beat over the head with? And it's an election year. I don't know how you overcome that. I really don't. I don't know how they get Meek to a yes. I mean, only Meek would know that, not us and Evans. So who knows what carrot they can dangle in front of them. But I would think that transportation's on the verge of collapsing, which is probably why we're still in session. Because I think we could probably be out of here this week if it wasn't for this turd sandwich that they're trying to deliver and call it a transportation package.
Yeah, it's time to start stomping on the gas and suspending rules so that they don't have anything to do, so that then we can get everybody complaining about going home. That's the key is right now, if we just continue regular order, there's still bills that have to flow through. If we start suspending and moving everything forward as fast as the speed of the paperwork will allow, then we can get everything done. And then all we're doing is waiting on transportation. That's your best chance to really get,
I think so,
a lot. I hope that these guys hold to the accountability stuff they're talking about. They're talking about a lack of accountability. Basically, they're just going to submit ODOT to audits, which they're already submitted to, right? That's not actual serious accountability. So I hope these guys get some real accountability, really take maybe some significant cuts to some of these taxes and whatnot. I don't know what they're going to ask for. I wish them all the best, more power to them. And as long as the Republicans all hang together with them, they can get some good changes to these bills.
I think so.
And I think that that's an important and underrated factor here.
The way it sits now, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the Democrats are pretty good at forcing people to do things they don't want to do.
They are very good at that. Very good.
And I don't know if that's something you give people kudos for or not, but I think that they'll probably try to figure out a way to get us to a yes, but I think it's not going to look like what it looks like now. I think we're going to see some crazy transportation light on some level that may be like super light, maybe transportation nothing, and then they'll call it a transportation package and then try to sell it as they got something through. So I don't know. Worst case is they could do nothing and then they call a special session in September and come back and then just try to ramrod something through. So we'll see.
Yucky.
Yep.
Yucky.
All right, next. Got to make up for your time that you went over on TLT.
Yeah. It's true. I like
Black Drag. Should we get into it?
Oh man, what a disaster. So Oregon is going to be on every single conservative social media account and podcast. Pretty much are already after we had an opening ceremony. And this is where I, push up my glasses and go, oh, well, actually, a lot of the reporting is that we passed the Black Drag resolution and then had the Black Drag dancing on the floor. It actually happened reverse because we have opening ceremonies first. They could have come and performed even without the Black Drag resolution. The Black Drag resolution was kind of the insult to add to the injury of the floor vote. Look, I get why they want to push this, but it's just more of Democrats are always accusing Republicans of social issue and being outside the norm on social issues. This is where Democrats are outside the norm on social issues, pushing stuff that doesn't have a lot of popularity and isn't exciting except to a small segment of people. And they're trying to turn it into a thing it's not, which is some big statewide thing that everybody cares about. That people come to Oregon for. People come to Oregon for the Shakespeare Festival. People come to Oregon to golf. People come to Oregon to enjoy the coast. People come to Oregon to ski. People do not come to Oregon for Black Drag. The other thing too, they always have to mention the fact that we were racist and maybe still are racist and definitely imply we're still racist. How you could explain that we're still racist while we have this Black Drag demonstration on the floor, please explain to me. I don't get that at all. But
they would probably say because Republicans weren't on the floor to watch it makes us racist.
And this is my final point, and then I turn the 3 minutes over to you, Brian. I think show up and vote no, not be excused for House business. To me, being excused for House business to avoid a vote is a little embarrassing, honestly. To me,
chicken shit is what it is. Show up on the floor, vote no. Like you said, I agree with you there 100%. I think there are still decorum rules. There are still things that we have to do when you're in this building that you just do. Now, whether you like it or not, it's irregardless because we're not in charge. I mean, Democrats are in charge, clearly in charge of everything. Speaker okays every single person that performs before every floor session. This is Travis Nelson's baby, Representative Nelson. That's up there in North Portland, which is fine. If that's what he wants to do. It's one thing to have an HCR or an HR talking about the history of something and you pass that. It's another thing to have that and then also shove a performance, which really wasn't that good, to be honest with you. I mean, regardless of whether you like drag shows or not, the performance itself was pretty horrendous. I'm sure you've seen it. Everybody's seen it by now at this point because it's been literally everywhere. I got a New York Post article sent to me today from, our friends over at Campaign HQ over there in Iowa. He was like, "What the heck's happening in Oregon?" And he sends me a New York Post article, and then he says, "Do we need to do some messaging on this?" I said, I think it's doing it itself. I don't think we needed any help. And so I say, please do more. Democrats, keep it going. Let's bring out every, thing you can that possibly is a 90-10 issue, 80-20 issue in Oregon that you're on the wrong side of, and put it out there so everybody can see it. I don't have an issue with drag queens at all. I don't have an issue with black drag queens at all. I don't know why it has to be focused in this very small. Drag queens alone is a small segment of population, let alone black drag queens got to be like 7. Like, I don't know why we're doing this besides basically maybe Travis. Oh, I know. Maybe Rep Nelson was a no on the transportation and he got this as a deal to be a yes.
Or this could have been in response to the Republicans doing courtesies to female athletes. No. We don't really know. There's no way to know. They didn't say that.
I don't think they normally would have done this, is my thinking. I think there's maybe this is the like you said, didn't we hear that the Democrats were going to get us back for doing the whole boys and girls sports things? Maybe that's what this was. They didn't say that, but maybe that's what it was.
And if they did, then I'll take it, because ultimately I think that we're on the right side of that issue. Supreme Court ruling 6-3. Speaking of crying on the floor, plenty of tears from Democrats about that. Yeah. I appreciate at least that they aren't going to ignore the Supreme Court like President Biden. But they, 6-3 decision. The conservatives are sticking with the general public on the trans issue, which is we're not going to facilitate with tax dollars, and we're not going to endanger girls, and we're going to allow them to compete fairly. And so, and that's basically the barrier. And then over 18, you get to make your own decisions about what you do with your body. And that
still
is
without taxpayer dollars.
Without taxpayer dollars.
Totally. And I'll in my comments on the black drag thing, again, I have no issue. These people are clearly over 18. If you looked at them, they're clearly over 18. I don't care. It's fine. Like, I don't care. Darcells is fine. Like, I don't have any issue with any of that sort of stuff. I don't, I don't care. It's fine. I think when we're here in the legislature to do important things, like we just talked about, passing a transportation tax, figuring out TLT revenues so our communities can pay for policing and housing and tourism and all the things, like, you're here to do, like, I think stuff that's run the government. And there's nothing in this that is running the government. This is just exploitation of something to put together some sort of weird political point. And I just don't like that sort of politics in the building. I think it's just, I think it's lowbrow. It's beneath us, and it shouldn't have happened.
All right. One more, two
gun
more.
Bills? How about gun bills?
Gun bills are,
they give you the quick summary. I'm ready.
Exist. I should have read that.
I know you're not ready for it, so I'll tell you. I'll start, and then you can answer.
You want to do the Senate bill? I'll do the House
bill. Yeah, Senate Bill 243, which has passed the Senate, hasn't gotten to the House yet. Right, we're still holding.
They sent it down to Ways and Means,
so it's sitting in Ways and Means. So basically, it puts a restriction on bump stocks, and which is basically what you put on the end of your AR-15 or your AK-47. To say that's what most people think of a bump stock. They think of like the AK-47 and the Russian guy just sitting there blowing off 50 rounds a second, and it's just bumping off your shoulder, right? So that allows you to do some of that stuff. So basically outlaws that. And then it expands the local government authority to regulate or prohibit people like me who have a concealed handgun license where I can carry. So it creates, again, further creates a patchwork of CHL ability to carry, guns in public spaces or where public, and this is like parks. This could be a municipal golf course. this could be, many different areas. And it was sold under this idea that, school boards are afraid of white men. So that have concealed handgun licenses is basically how it was sold. And it's a stupid idea. It's going to do nothing to make anything more safe. Matter of fact, it makes things less safe. These are the same people, by the way, who also like to defund the police and don't want to have school resource officers and don't want to have the things. Who would actually be at these school board meetings, by the way, is school resource officers. So they're not there. So the reality is,
well, if you have police at a school board meeting, that's intimidation.
Yeah, exactly, right? But yet they don't want somebody there that has a CHL. My church, and I'm sure your church does too, our church, we have actually a group of men who stand at the door now. They greet people, but they are also security. All of them carry.
Yep. Same.
And guess who's happy that, and I don't carry my gun with me to church. You know why? Because I know they're there.
Yep.
Carrying their gun. And I don't have to. And I feel safe because I know they're there.
Yep.
And I know they know how to use it. And I'm fine with that. And I think that we have to look at this from the standpoint of CHL holders by and large. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but they're not the ones we have to worry about. They're not the ones.
Some of the lowest crime rates of any group out there.
And the bump stock stuff is just stupid. Nobody uses bump stocks, but enthusiasts anyways that, go out and have some fun. And it's silly. It's just a way to another erosion of it. It's a Prozansky bill, of course. And it just means nothing. This was a gut and stuff at the last minute. So we'll vote no. They'll all vote yes. It'll pass and we'll move forward.
The scarier the looking of the gun, the more they try to ban it, or the item, right? The scarier it looks. That's their strategy. It's not about what's the most deadly. It's not about what's going to prevent the most deaths. It's not about, doing mental health policy and preventing people from wanting to kill themselves or other people. It's always about, well, does this look scary? Well, then maybe we should ban it.
Yeah.
Right. The other bill, 3072, I think it just sets up the dealer licensing system under Measure 114. My problem with this bill is it actually probably needs to pass, because if we do not pass the bill and correctly set up the licensing system, no one will be able to sell firearms in Oregon. So until the Supreme Court rules that Measure 114 isn't allowed and actually does disagree with the Second Amendment, some of these gun bills that actually fix problems with Measure 114 we shouldn't vote for them, I don't think, but they are necessary to pass, because no one will be able to. What we don't want in Oregon is no one to be able to buy a gun, no one to be able to buy ammo, no one be able to sell guns and ammo. So under the current restriction we're stuck under, we do need to have those regulations actually work, because if OSP can't process background checks, if OSP can't license dealers, etc., we are going to have some serious problems and no one will be able to get firearms. And that's going to cause even more problems. So again, I understand and Republicans should vote no and stand up and say Measure 114 violates the Second Amendment. It does. I believe the Supreme Court will eventually strike it down. Unfortunately, they're not going to do it this term. No. They've said they want more circuit splits and more of these things to come up. And I think it's so they can cut them all off the head, hopefully, and deal with it in one fell swoop.
Could.
So they don't have to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So there'll be some sort of landmark gun case that finally kills off all this stuff. But for now, in Oregon, unfortunately, the Ninth Circuit ruling is going to stand, and it upholds California and Oregon systems on this stuff. So we have to figure out how to operate most effectively in those restrictions until the Supreme Court rescues us.
3076 was the bill, not 3072.
I'm sorry, 3076.
But again, in that same, we alluded to it earlier, but go watch that CapCon, because there was a great discussion on 3076 in CapCon. And I think Senator Girard did a great job of basically the rural-urban divide, and this bill is another example of that. I think Senator McClain did a really good job of asking LFO of this bill how much is just redundant federal law that's already there. Mm-hmm. And it's basically the whole bill is already written. So they're doing it literally. It's all politics. There's really nothing. I mean, it really kind of is a nothing. I mean, there's something to it, but it's stupid. They go after the home-based guys. They go after some of the other folks that do it on the side, that do some stuff. So it's a crappy bill, but it's purely for political agenda.
Yep.
Which I also wonder too, because I think we kind of win on this one. I mean, Measure 114 barely passed.
Yep.
If you go look at the swing districts, it was really more like 60-40 no on 114. So I kind of feel like we win on these bills. And even if they pass them, I think we can use them against Democrats. We just have to be unafraid to do it. And that seems to be our problem on the Republican side, is to be unafraid. Normally, because if we say anything about guns, Kevin Sterrett's there just to blast the shit out of us and say how stupid we are as Republicans, and we should, basically just walk out and be crazy while he's walked his happy butt to Idaho.
If the Idaho Firearms Federation, if the Oregon Firearms Federation would have actually fought Measure 114, they would have defeated it. But
they won't. He's too busy taking money out of it and paying for his own mortgage.
Yeah.
And it's so don't give Oregon Firearms Federation any money. They're a horrible organization. The Kevin Sterrett is not a nice person. He's learned that he makes way more money attacking Republicans than he does Democrats.
Correct.
He does nothing to actually help shape policy or anything in the building. I don't know. I still don't know why we're not putting forth some pro-gun owner policies. We need to do some more of that work. Of course, he would never do that. What's the pro-gun policy stuff that he could kick forward to Republicans to put forth? Yeah, he doesn't. He does nothing except for sit there and write emails in his basement and just blast Republicans for not doing enough, not walking out, not, I don't know. I think he's all but would say that, why don't you, basically just go beat up the Democrats.
Well, and he only endorsed 3 candidates last time. And I can't remember if we talked about this in the podcast or not. Noah Robinson, Diane Linthicum, and Dwayne Yunker. He can't even get them to walk out.
No.
So, I mean, at this point, what is he even doing?
All of them on the floor. All of them going to vote they all voted no, but none of them walking out.
Yeah.
So that just tells you that his organization is shit and it has no power. There's a few other organizations out there that I've seen that are doing some good work, that are trying. They show up at the Capitol, and I've talked to some of those guys, and those guys are actually trying to make some change happen. And I hope they go forward and they fill that void that Oregon Firearms has left everybody else in the hole on, and they kind of come in and fill that void. And we have some pretty good Second Amendment advocates that are actually doing pro Second Amendment work, not just anti-Republican stuff.
Yep. All right, last topic. Ski resorts scramble after major insurers leave Oregon, or an insurer. So the insurer for some of Oregon's largest ski resorts is leaving the state because it's too costly to do business of here because of how we handle liability when skiers suffer injuries. Oh, interesting. So we've gone too far now to the trial lawyers. We've tilted the rules so far in favor of trial attorneys and their clients that now we can't insure ski resorts. And I'm sure that if you talk to them, every time they passed a new law on this front, they would say, our goal is not to shut down recreation. Our goal is to milk them for as much money as humanly possible. They didn't say that, but that's what happens. Mm-hmm. And now we are seeing the results of this. And Mount Hood, Meadows, Timberline, I'm assuming Mount Bachelor are all in this same boat where they will literally not be able. What's that?
Not Bachelor.
Bachelor
they have the remaining. One remaining insurance company is the one doing Mount Bachelor, but
who will be able to charge an arm and a leg now? They used to just charge an arm. Now they're adding legs. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah. It is a huge problem, and recreational immunity. The trial lawyers have fought it. We passed some basic recreational immunity for like hiking. And some of the other stuff, with public land. So if you're out hiking and stuff, you can't just basically sue somebody because you fell over and broke your leg while you were hiking on a trail, in the forest. Like guess what? There's trees on the ground.
Because
Pick your feet up.
No private company profits from that. So why would we punish, local governments for that? But as long as there's a company profiting from it, we'll punish them.
Like, I don't know why we have to give these recreational immunities, and what I call them, they're not recreational immunity. You know what it is? It's common sense. Like, listen, you can ski. I go skiing with my boys, and one's snowboarder, one's a skier. I'm a skier, skied my whole life. I'm a good skier. But listen, there's a point at which I'm not going to go do backflips. Because guess what? I'm 50 and it hurts when I hit the ground and I'm not really good at it anymore, so I don't really like jumping. I don't really so you know what? I go up, I go down the groomers and I go back up, right? My biggest fear is getting on the chairlift with somebody who's going to wreck me getting off the chairlift. That's my biggest fear because I'm not going to do dumb stuff that's going to put me in jeopardy and break a knee or an ankle or something, right? And the other thing is like my son was being all crazy on his snowboard a couple of years ago, and he broke his wrist, right? Like every snowboarder does. They break their wrist at some point, right? Because they fall and they reach back and try to land. Should I have sued, the ski resort? No, you don't sue the ski resort because my son's a dummy, because he put his hand back and he broke his wrist. Like, it's not the ski resort's fault. And that's the problem with it. There's too many people suing for all of this crap. And now you have insurance companies that are basically just saying, like the wildfire companies, at some point, we just can't insure you. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I just love that all of these, socialists are like, yeah, we'll just redistribute the wealth. And they forget that we live in a free country that doesn't require anybody to offer these services if it doesn't make sense to offer them. So we'll just not have insurance eventually. And I kid you not, I feel like the trial lawyer's position on this is if you get hurt skiing, you should just become the new owner of Mount Bachelor. So let's just have that system where you just become the new owner of Mount Bachelor if you get hurt until the next guy gets hurt. And then that guy becomes the new owner of Mount Bachelor. And let's just do that. Because honestly, the system we've got now is terrible. It's really, really bad. So also, we're going to have Democrats out there not curtailing, talking about how, we still need tourism dollars. That's really important. And then we're going to kill tourism activities that'll prevent people from coming here and spending the dollars. And then we're going to have another revenue problem. And that's what these guys do not get. And this is what Ronald Reagan and lots of Republicans have pointed out. If something moves, they're going to tax it. If it slows, and then if it keeps moving, they're going to regulate it. And then when it stops moving, they subsidize it. And you can see that with housing. They taxed housing when it started in Oregon. There was still too much housing. I watched a video this morning. Hector McPherson, the author of Senate Bill 100, the one-term state senator from Lynn County, and his Senate Bill 100. And so there was too much development that still happened, so they regulated it. And now, where are we? The development isn't happening, so we're trying to subsidize it to keep it happening, right? But only a little bit. And heaven forbid, never in the greatest farmland of all time.
Hopefully, Democrats see this bill. It's in limbo right now. I mean, it's barely made its way out of revenue yesterday. Senate Bill 1196 is the number. But this sums it up, I think, Reagan, is the Dave Bird said this in there, and he basically does the National Ski Areas Association. He says Oregon is arguably the worst litigation climate of all 37 ski states in America.
Whoa. But also not shocked because the trial lawyers, if you know anything about politics, they've dominated Democrat politics. Now they have their own Consumer Protection Committee in the House run by, there was a quote given to Willamette Week calling Nathan Sosa, a trial lawyer, the trial lawyer's new call girl when he got elected. So if you have any idea who has the most influence over the Consumer Protection Committee, it would be the trial lawyers.
That's the truth.
Final note, Brian, you and I, we talked about Twitter before. Great follow. You had Dave Honeycutt on your podcast episode. I'm sorry that I was sick for that, but that is a tremendous episode. People need to go back and listen to that. Dave Honeycutt, such a wealth of knowledge, really great guy. We talked about that. They have started a Twitter account. Follow at OPOA_official. They're tweeting memes. They're talking about how they're sitting down with breakfast for breakfast in Ben and hearing somebody next to them complaining about design review. Hopefully will be fixed all by Senate Bill 974. And then calling out DLCD for trying to appeal and protect some incredible farmland in Deschutes County. And there's pictures of all this rock that's being farmed there. I didn't know you could farm rock, but here it is. They've been growing rock here for many, many years, and so now we're going to farm the rock, and we're going to protect this prime rock farmland, Brian. Really tremendous. So last tweet, we're feeling much better that Senate Bill 83 may pass. Republicans pull it to the floor daily, trying to get it to pass.
Yep.
They said, but if it doesn't, we've joined Harney and Grant counties in a lawsuit to overturn the maps. If the legislature fails to act, we will. OPOA is a great example of what advocacy organizations in every sector should be. This is what your group should look like. If the legislature won't act, we will. We're lawyering up. We're taking you to court because you're stupid.
Yeah, Property Owners Association is a great organization. So they do everything from, like I said, fighting the wildfire bill to they help people that are trying to develop in lands that aren't normally, that have to walk through all the Senate Bill 100 stuff, all the land use decisions. And then they helped us work on Senate Bill 974, which is great, which is really trying to streamline the processes within those land use applications within the UGB even. So Sam and Dave do great work. We love those guys, and Sam she was supposed to be on there with me with Dave, and they want to come back and maybe we can dive into the wildfire one, which would be kind of interesting from their perspective, because Dave and I really didn't touch on that. So that'd be a fun one. And then we could talk about building on rocks and why that's prime farmland. That'd be good.
Awesome. Well, a great episode, a lightning round, and we're going to keep it under 60 minutes.
Look at us.
Fantastic. Great job, Brian. All right, here we go.
See you, buddy. Lightning round to the finish.
Next week, last week. We're almost there, guys.